Sea. Throughout the northeastern United States are many air bases. But that morning, no interceptors respond in a timely fashion to the highest alert situation. This includes the Andrews squadrons, which have the longest lead time and are 12 miles from the White House. Whatever the explanation for the huge failure, there have been no reports to my knowledge of reprimands. This further weakens the incompetence theory. Incompetence usually earns reprimands. This causes me to ask, and other media need to ask, if there were stand-down orders. The events of 9/11 begin with aircraft going wildly off course. Incredibly, despite radar tracking for almost 2 hours, the whole of the mighty U.S. Air Force goes AWOL that morning. It's a mind-bending anomaly. Not a single U.S. Air Force interceptor turns a wheel until it's too late. There are no jets at all. It's a matter of historical record. That could happen only two ways. Either it was staggering multiple simultaneous coincidental incompetence at all levels in many agencies defying known laws of averages, a 54 million to 1 chance, which is the 9/11 Commission official story. There's another explanation. The U.S. Air Force is neutralized by design. The evidence indicates this is about a 1-to-1 chance. Michael Rupert, a former Los Angeles Police Department detective, was the first major 9/11 skeptic and researcher in the world and remains one of the foremost. He was one of 40 experts on 9/11 who testified at the 6-day International Citizens Inquiry into 9/11, held in Toronto in May of 2004. I helped organize that event. At the inquiry, Michael Rupert addresses the absence of jet interceptors, but the unlikelihood of a simple stand-down order, and asks,
what if they were so confused and had been so deliberately confused that they couldn't respond?
Michael Rupert is standing by at his office in Sherman Oaks, California. Michael, thanks for this. What is the reason for the failure of U.S. military jets to show up in a timely fashion on 9/11?
Well, the simple fact is, Barry, that they didn't know where to go. The reason that they didn't know where to go was because a number of conflicting and overlapping war game exercises were taking place, one of which, Northern Vigilance, had pulled a significant number of North American fighter aircraft into Canada and Western Alaska and Northern Alaska in a mock Cold War hijack exercise. There was another drill, Vigilant Guardian, which was a hijack exercise, a command post exercise, but it involved the insertion of false radar blips onto radar screens in the Northeast Air Defense Sector. In addition, we have a confirmation, thanks to General Richard Myers, who was acting chairman of the Joint Chiefs, who told Richard Clark, as reported in Clark's book, that there was another exercise, Vigilant Warrior, which was, in fact, according to a NORAD source, a live-fly hijack drill being conducted at the same time. With only 8 available fighter aircraft, and they have to be dispatched in pairs, they were dealing with as many as 22 possible hijacks on the day of 9/11, and they couldn't separate the war game exercises from the actual hijacks.
But this was done deliberately, though.
Apparently so, and I will be saying that in my forthcoming book, Crossing the Rubicon, 9/11 and the Decline of American Empire at the End of the Age of Oil. We have done an extensive investigation on that to show that these war game exercises were apparently very well planned by someone who I will show, I believe, was Dick Cheney in the United States government to deliberately confuse FAA, NORAD, and U.S. Air Force fighter response to fulfill a prophecy that another man had once said, let one happen and stop the rest.
On that very point, we have a recording.
Hi, Boston Center, Team U. We have a problem here. We have a hijacked aircraft headed towards New York. We need someone to scramble some F-16s or something up there to help us out.
Is this real world or exercise?
No, this is not an exercise, not a test.
Now, the 9/11 Commission didn't mention the war games, is that right?
No, in their final report they did mention, I think in one paragraph, Vigilant Guardian, but the response given by NORAD Commanding General Ralph Eberhart and other Air Force spokespeople was absolutely nonsensical, and it made no mention of any of the other war game exercises. Eberhard's position was, in fact, which is a very ludicrous position, that the Vigilant Guardian exercise, leaving aside the others, actually helped speed response on 9/11, and that is absolutely not the case.
How does this relate to the 9/11 Commission report, which says that planes had gone in the wrong directions?
Well, that's a separate issue, and that remains to be clarified. But what I will be disclosing in my book, in effect, is that there were two simultaneously operating command and control systems functioning on the day of 9/11, and at some times they were issuing conflicting orders. We do not have a clear explanation for why fighters from Andrews Air Force Base were sent out over the sea first and couldn't turn around because the 9/11 Commission seemed to change all the evidence just arbitrarily right before it issued its final report. So we don't have a clear explanation, but certainly there was this all consistent with a motive that said make sure that the fighters don't get to any place in time to stop the three critical attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon.
You have Laura Brown of the FAA. She attends hearings of the 9/11 Commission that bear on the aviation aspects of the day. Embarrassed by previous non-forthcoming testimony about the FAA's role, she sends an email in May of 2003 to members of the media whose business cards she had collected. Within minutes after the first aircraft hit the World Trade Center, she states in her email, the FAA immediately established several phone bridges that included FAA field facilities, the FAA Command Center, FAA Headquarters, DOD, the Secret Service, and other government agencies. The U.S. Air Force liaison to the FAA immediately joined the FAA Headquarters phone bridge and established contact with NORAD on a separate line. The FAA shared real-time information on the phone bridges about the unfolding events, including information about loss of communication with aircraft, loss of transponder signals, unauthorized changes in course, and other actions being taken by all the flights of interest, including Flight 77. The Commission imagines, page 35, that at 8:46, when Flight 11 hits the North Tower of the World Trade Center, neither the President or anyone, quote, in the White House or traveling with the President knew that Flight 11 had been hijacked at 8:14 that morning. Wrong. The Commission imagines, page 39, that as late as 9:30, quote, no one in the President's traveling party had any information that other aircraft were hijacked or missing. Wrong. The Commission imagines it can get away with such claims, even though millions of people saw TV news reports about the hijackings on CNN beginning at 8:48.
Unlike the Northwoods plan, the FBI actually carried out the attack on the World Trade Center in 1993. They actually hired a retired 43-year-old former Egyptian army officer, Ahmad Salam, and paid him $1 million and gave him real explosives, a detonator, and told him to build a bomb and to give it to the foolish people that he was controlling to allow them to attack the World Trade Center complex. There was only one problem with their plan. Mr. Salam was not as ruthless and sociopathic as the FBI and their globalist controllers. He began to get very concerned right before and, of course, after the attack, saying, why are you giving me real explosives if this is just a sting operation? When they told him to go ahead and let the attack go forward, he secretly recorded the head of the FBI in New York ordering him to let the bombing take place. It's very important to understand that all the evidence you just saw is documented, 110%. It is part of the public record. The FBI admits it, but the media wrote a few stories about it. There were a couple of nightly newscasts. It was never heard of again.
In July 2001, Ken Williams of the Phoenix FBI office wrote a now famous memo to headquarters suggesting a nationwide program to keep tabs on suspicious flight school students. But the suggestion was suppressed before 9/11 by the FBI's Radical Fundamentalism Unit, where Michael Maltby, Marion Bowman, and unit head David Frasca all had access to it. Shortly afterward, in August of 2001, the Minneapolis FBI field office questioned recently arrested Zacarias Moussaoui, later alleged to be the 20th hijacker. As the investigation intensified in the weeks before 9/11, One Minneapolis agent claimed he was worried Moussaoui might try to fly a hijacked airliner into the World Trade